So one day, Jesus, with his disciples, said to them, after teaching for a while, he said, let's go to the other side of the lake. So probably right around here, Capernaum, which was like his home base. He got in the boat with the disciples and made their way with the goal to make it to this town called the Gerasenes, which was a town that was kind of ruled by pagan influence, Greco-Roman culture. Maybe there was some pagan temples there. There were certainly some pig farmers. And his goal was to go to the other side of the tracks, so to speak, or to go to this different place where it was kind of scary. But that's what Jesus does, as David Garland wrote in his commentary on Mark, the NIV application commentary. Jesus reveals that there's no place in the world into which God's reign does not intend to extend itself. So Jesus says, let's go, guys. We are going to speak to the people on the other side of the lake. So they get into the boat, and almost immediately we discover that there is a storm, and it's a big storm. The squalls are high, and the disciples are freaking out. They've probably got buckets. They're trying to get water out of the boat, and they're thinking, this might be it. Like, we might die right now. But what's kind of hilarious to me is that during the entire time, Jesus has fallen asleep, which just demonstrates that Jesus got tired sometimes, right? So he's asleep, and they wake him up, and they say, teacher, don't you care if we drown? And Jesus kind of gets up, and he's soaking wet, and text says that he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, quiet, be still. And then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. And then there was a teaching opportunity, and Jesus said to the disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And they're just like, staring with their mouth open. They were terrified, and they asked each other, who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him? Well, now maybe it's 70 degrees, and it's calm waters, and they eventually make their way to the other side of the lake, to the region of the Gerasenes. So again, we'll look at our map. Here's the territory right here. That's the Decapolis. It's the 10 cities that have been heavily influenced by Greek and pagan culture. And the text says that when they got to the other side of the lake, Jesus got out of the boat, and a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him, and it is about to go down. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had been chained hand and foot, but he tore his chains apart. He broke the irons on his feet, and no one was strong enough to subdue him, or no one was strong enough to tame him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Can you imagine the pain and the misery and the torturesome experience that this man was going through? I think that he's the most tortured person in the entire Bible. Now, we'll soon discover that when he speaks, it's like a legion speaking through him. He's almost not even able to control himself. And we know that a legion is 6,000 soldiers plus 120 horsemen. That's a lot of demons, and maybe he's kind of estimating, like I get thousands. We know it's at least 2,000. We'll discover that 2,000. We'll discover that in a moment. But this man is possessed by a whole lot of evil influences. David Garland says he is condemned to live out his days alone amid the decaying bones of the dead, with no one who loves him and no one to love. Can you imagine how horrible of an existence that this man had? No one could tame him. Nobody knew what to do with him. They tried to put him in jail to keep him away from everybody. He just busted out of all of that. You might ask the question, how does this guy eat? Well, we don't know, but it's possible. One scholar said that people would take food and they'd bring it to the tombs and they'd place it on the tombs to feed their dead ancestors. This man is a disaster, to say the least. And we discovered last week when we were talking about 1 John chapter 3, verse 8, that the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. And if Jesus is going to lose a battle, this is the battle that he's going to lose, because it's one versus thousands of demons. Here's what happens. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees. And can you imagine, like Jesus sees this guy running from the distance, he's all, cut up and losing his mind, and bows down in front of Jesus. And they know that they are pitted against vastly superior firepower. Whew. And he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." Jesus said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." And then he asked him his name. "What is your name?" And the demons speak through this man. "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. So these thousands of demons are terrified because they know that they are sitting in front of the great I Am. And so they start looking around, and the demons are like, "Hey, I got an idea." There's a large herd of pigs. They're feeding nearby a hillside, and the demons beg Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go in to them." And Jesus is like, "All right, fine. I'll give you permission to do that." And the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, right? So there's enough demons to fill up 2,000 pigs. 2,000 in number rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Jesus first calms the storm, and now he calms this demon-possessed man with just a word. Quiet. Be still. Come out of this man. And there's peace. Those tending the pigs, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. They're like, "No way, like I've known this guy since he was just a young tyke. I coached him in Little League, and then all of a sudden, nobody could control him." And they really wanted to see what was happening. So when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid, because they're like, "This man, Jesus, has so much power. And it's the same, like when the disciples saw him calm the sea, they were terrified. And now the townspeople are terrified, because they're like, this man has extraordinary power. So much power, we're kind of nervous." And then those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. And then the people began to plead with Jesus Now, if you don't know the story, or if it's been a while since you've read this, what do you think they asked Jesus to do? Maybe they were like, if you know the story of the prodigal son, maybe they're like, "I've known that guy ever since he was in second grade. And now, for years we couldn't tame him, cutting himself, and now he's been free. That guy was dead, and now he's alive. Let's kill the fattened calf and let's throw a party. Praise Jesus." Or maybe they're like, "Hey, let's bring the band up here and let's sing some worship songs. Goodness gracious, this is the most miraculous transformation we have ever seen. Let's give Jesus all the glory." Or maybe some people said, "Hey, I know another guy down who goes to my middle school, and it seems like he's filled with demons too. Maybe you could have Jesus come in and he could heal them," right? I mean, if he's got this kind of miracle working power, maybe you would invite him to come back into the town to do some work. It's remarkable. Here's what they say to Jesus after he does this miracle. They say, will you leave?" As Garland says, they chase off the source of their deliverance and salvation, because Jesus came to destroy the devil's work. Right? Jesus came to disarm the principalities and to put a spectacle of them by triumphing over them on the cross. And these people are like, We're cool with a little bit of Jesus. We're cool with like hearing Jesus teach a little bit. And we'll even go over to Galilee and spend some time in the synagogues on a few holidays. But we don't really want Jesus messing with our lives. We don't really want to reorder our lives according to what Jesus wants. Garland goes on and he says, people can tolerate religion as long as it does not affect their business profits. Like, I'm cool if you do a little bit of healing here and there and can hear you teach here and there, but if you mess with my money, you mess with my business, my kids and my marriage and my organization, Jesus, can you please leave? Because that kind of power, that's a little terrifying. Jesus is a gentleman in this case, and he's like, okay, if you want me to leave, I'll leave. And now it gets interesting because the man who has been healed from the demons, as Jesus was getting into the boat, he begged Jesus to go with him. Now, again, if you don't know the story, what do you think Jesus said to him? Maybe he said, yeah, come follow me. I mean, you've just experienced an extraordinary transformation. Why don't you come in and join all of my disciples? After all, Luke chapter 8 tells us that as Jesus was traveling from village to village, he had the 12, and then he had a few other women, specifically women who had been cured of evil spirits, and this one lady who's one of the more prominent followers of Jesus named Mary Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had come out. So maybe this guy's like, I mean, that's cool that Mary had 7 demons that were driven out of her, but that's nothing compared to me. I just got thousands of demons driven out of me. Jesus, maybe I should follow you because then I could be a perfect billboard for your miracle working power. And Jesus says to him, nah, I want you to stay. I want you to go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So even though the town doesn't want me to stay, you're going to stay. And you're going to be the conduit for God's salvation to the region of the Gennesaret, to the region of the Decapolis. And he says, all right, sounds good, Jesus. I'll go do that. So the man went away, and he began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. Like, I could end the sermon right there, and it would have been worth coming to church today just to read about the glorious power of Jesus, that he has come in part to give you peace, to reign over your anxiety, to calm your storms, to deliver you from whatever it is that torments you. Have a nice day, everybody. But if you're like me, you probably got some questions about this wild story. And one of the questions is, what about the poor pigs? I mean, they're just hanging out eating food, and then all of a sudden, they're possessed by demons, and they become kamikaze pigs to jump into the, like, what about, I kind of feel bad about the pig. The second question you might have, this is a question I had, is how will the pig farmers bring home the bacon? Like, this is their business. 2,000 pigs, that gets you a lot of money. And now they got no business, they got no money. And they're like, if Jesus continues to hang out here, we're going to lose everything, right? Well, how are they going to bring home the bacon? Now, we are Western Christians, right? Most of us were Americans, and that's just the way that we see the world in a certain way. So when we hear the story of the pigs, we do feel kind of bad for them because in our mind, we see pigs with Miss Piggy, with Babe the pig. Do you guys remember, well, this is other parts of the country, they have Piggly Wiggly. I had a Piggly Wiggly shirt. I wore it every day for like years. It was such a cool shirt. And, oh, by the way, most scholars believe that Porky the pig was the last one to drown because he was overheard saying, "That's all, folks. I'll be here all night." Okay, so anytime you read a Bible text, it's important to ask the question, what did Jesus' original audience think of this text, right, 2,000 years ago? In first century Palestine, how did they receive this text? Here's what most of them would have been thinking. Swine's flesh was associated with the brutal persecution of Jews by pagans who wanted to eradicate peculiar Jewish practices. Quick story. 200 years prior to this episode of the pigs going into the lake, the Greeks had conquered Jerusalem, and they captured this religious leader named Eleazar. And he was 90 years old. He was a hero of the people. And they grabbed Eleazar aside one day, and they took a piece of pork, and they stuffed it in his mouth. And they said, "You're going to eat that, right?" And he's like, so he spits it out, and they're like, "Oh, no, you don't. We're going to put you in prison. You better think about this, boy." So he goes in prison, and Eleazar's disciples come up to him, and they say, "Look, you're 90 years old. You have been faithful. Why don't you just make yourself a little meal with some different kind of meat and just say it's pork, and you'll eat it, and you won't break the kosher laws, but they'll think that you're eating pork." And Eleazar says, "No way, because then I'll cause my brother to stumble. I'll cause some fellow Jewish people to fall along the way, so I'm not doing it." So the next day they come in, they grab him, they torture him, they beat him to death. And as Eleazar is dying, he could be heard shouting out, "I am enduring this terrible sufferings in my body under this beating, but in my soul I am glad to suffer these things because I fear God." And everybody living around Eleazar said, "Wow, what courage that he refused to eat pork." All that to say, in Mark chapter 5, when people hear this story of Jesus delivering the demon, the pigs going into the water, that the Jews would have hailed the swine's destruction as a token of God's ultimate vindication over the powers of oppression, that Jesus has showed up to destroy the devil's work. And it has been demonstrated by the delivering of this man from a legion of demons and by delivering the pigs, which represent persecution. Okay, second question, and this is a good question. How will the pig farmers bring home the bacon? Like, they've just lost everything. Now, the answer to this question is I'm not exactly sure. Because it's possible that maybe Jesus made it right. Maybe he came back and blessed them in some sort of way. But I do know this, that when Jesus shows up and wrecks you and reorders your life and calls you to himself and gives you victory and healing and peace, that you're like, okay, I lost my business. Maybe I'm called to move away. Maybe I'm called to end this relationship. But when he reorders your life, that's what you do. God will take care of a life that's fully surrendered to him. And some of you have done that, right? You were so moved by the power of Jesus that you forsook some things, that you did what Proverbs chapter 3 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, because I don't know how I'm going to be able to make money now. I don't know how I'm going to be able to provide for my family. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to trust that God's going to take care of it. In all your ways, you acknowledged him, and he made your paths straight. Now, I want to mainly spend some time what I think is the main point of this account. And the main point of this account is as we look at that man who was possessed by many, many demons, cutting himself, screaming out at night, we may see a mirror of ourselves in him. Now, sometimes you read Bible stories and you're like, that's kind of an extreme story. Most of us have never met a man quite like that, where they're like, I can't even handle him. I'm putting him out at the tombs. But some of you, you've been in a situation like that. Maybe not that extreme, but you've been in situations, as David Garland describes it, where you're beaten down by others. You're divided against yourself. There's a civil war raging within. It's like, I know, Paul said in Romans 7, I know what I should be doing, but I got this voice over here, and I got this voice, and there's the voice of the Lord, and the voice of my mama, but then there's the voice of my friends, and I got all this tormenting going on. And though you're not every night howling at the moon necessarily, you're howling and you're screaming because there's those things going off that just always just speaking to you, right? We planned that. Good job, it's perfect timing. gloomy tombs of life, feeling all alone. I mean, some of you felt that, right? You're like, I feel alone. My family has rejected me. My friends reject me. And although I'm surrounded by people, I kind of feel a little bit like that man who's tormented. And I just want to say that Jesus wants to speak peace over you, calmness over you. And he can do it with one word. Just be still. Be calm. I got this. I got this. We read this verse just a few minutes ago. John did. He said, be self-controlled and alert because you got an enemy who's prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Now, if the enemy was like an actual lion where he's charging at you, roaring, you'd probably do a good job of keeping him at bay. But the enemy's sneakier than that. He comes disguised as an angel of light. It looks good. It looks like, oh, well, everybody's doing it, and then you take the bait. And I mean, at one point, Jesus said towards the end of his life, this is right before Gethsemane, right before the cross. He said to his disciples, I will not speak to you any longer, speak with you much longer. For the prince of this world is coming, but he has no hold on me. Because my aim, the Son of God's goal, is to destroy the devil's work. And when I go to the cross and say it is finished, I have disarmed the teeth of the enemy. Now, this is key. He has no hold on Jesus, but some of you have allowed the devil to have a hold on you because he's coming in as an angel of light and you're falling for his sneaky traps. So I want to spend the rest of our time just talking about one way that we fall for the devil's schemes. There's one way that he comes disguised as an angel of light that I want to talk about, and it's the way that he comes into our homes through these things right here. Now, I want to encourage you. I'm going to talk to the parents. Okay, if you're a teenager, you're going to be mad at me in a few minutes, but I want to talk to the parents because we as parents are called to lead our kids into peace and holiness. And these things are one of Satan's greatest strategies. So we have to be careful. We have to put things on our kids' devices so that we don't just allow the prince of this worldwide web into the home. And some of you are like, Dave, if I do that, if I start locking down their devices or putting protection or limiting what they're going to look at, my kids will scream. And I got news for you. Your kids are already screaming. You just can't hear it because you've relegated them out to the tombs where they're screaming with every other young person. And you keep allowing the devil to get his message across, but you keep closing your eyes thinking to yourself, oh, they're just fine. They're an exception. And you have no idea the tormenting that is going on in their hearts because of a result of what's coming into their devices. So you've heard of the book Anxious Generation written by Jonathan Haidt, right? This is fact. This is not like my opinion. This is a researcher who said ever since 2010, 2012, when teenagers started getting smartphones with social media and 1,000 different apps, that major depression among teens has gone up, skyrocketed, 145% increase since 2010 through girls, 161% through boys. I talked to a teacher after the first service and she said, yeah, but it's not just devices, it's also pornographic literature that gets you to start thinking about this stuff, right? This is a big deal. This is a big deal. This is, in my opinion, the number one way that Satan is getting into our homes because we have left our kids unprotected and he's devouring them and we think, well, not my kid, not my kid. And we won't uncover the rocks to be willing to look at all those little squiggly things and deal with it. And it's not your kid's fault. It's our fault. It's your fault because you think they're going to be different. Look at this next one. Mental illnesses among college students has skyrocketed. Anxiety and depression. We have an anxious generation. And that is the devil's goal, is to make your kids more anxious, more insecure. We say to our young girls, you can look at all the social media you want. We're going to compare yourself against all of the people's highlight reels that are perfect, but don't compare yourself to them. And then we say to our young boys, I'm going to make a little pile of pornographic magazines right here, and I'm going to put a sheet over it, and don't look at those. What are we doing? What are we doing in giving our kids unlimited access with no protections with their devices? Here's what we're doing. We're creating an anxious generation, and it is your responsibility. And teenagers, don't, because I know you're mad at me right now, teenagers, don't be elbowing your parents, okay? This is the responsibility of the parents to keep the devil out. I'm not saying it's the devices that's the devil. I'm not saying it's video games that are the devil, but it is the doorway that is making itself into your home, and we need to shut the door because Satan's got no power over Jesus, but some of you are allowing the power of Satan to make it inside your home. And we are called to have holy and peaceful homes. Jesus wants to calm our sea and deliver us from darkness, and yet we choose the chains. And we blame everybody else rather than looking at ourselves. This is my opinion. I don't have a verse for this. If you have a teenager, somebody in your house, put screen protection, not the protection where the thing doesn't get scratched or broken, like protection so that you have peace, that when you give them a phone, that you don't have to worry. That you don't have to think, oh, I hope, that you know. So this is what I use. I'm not the smartest parent here, and I don't have a perfect home. But I'll tell you what I use. Ask some other parents to see what they use. I want to encourage you to look into this. I don't make money off this company. I'm just saying this has been a blessing to me, right? Because it protects the devil from getting in your house. If you have a teenager with a phone, would you take this? This is your number one priority as a parent, is to protect the minds of your kids, and you're allowing the devil to run amok. At one point, God inspired the prophet Isaiah to say this to the nation. He said this to the nation of Israel. I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me, and I was found by those who did not seek me, to a nation that did not call on my name. And I said, here am I. All day long, I've held out my hands to an obstinate people whose walk in ways not good, pursuing their own imagination. Some of you have created an imagination that your kids are just fine with their unprotected devices. It is a trap. It is Satan. And this is your responsibility to figure this out. I know it's exhausting. I know new technology comes out every day. We always got to be checking up on it. It is the most important thing you can do as parents, because the devil is getting a foothold and you're being tricked. He goes on, this verse actually is like fulfilled by this man who's out at the tombs, cutting himself. By the way, 1 in 6 teenagers are cutting themselves because they're in so much pain. They sit among the graves and spend their nights keeping secret vigil, who eat the flesh of pigs and whose pots hold broth of unclean meat, who say, keep away, don't come near me. I just want a little bit of Jesus so I can show up on Sunday morning and get my verse and get my sermon and then go back to all of my unrighteous ways. That's what the people in the region of the Genesee said. Just give me a little bit of Jesus, but I don't want too much, because then you're going to reorient my life. I just want to be like everybody else, running around like chickens with their heads cut off, access to all the different media, and then before we know it, we are raising an anxious generation. We have got to do something about this now. It is your responsibility. Let's figure this out. And if we all do this together as a church family, imagine the difference. Your kids are going to hate you at first. I mean, we've been doing this at youth group, right? Like, we don't allow kids to bring their phones at youth group because we're like, we just want to give you 2 hours a week of a refuge from the storms and the tormenting of comparison. But the rest of the 100 other hours of the week, you got to get this locked in. We got to lock in. Sweating up here. So I want to introduce to you a friend of mine named Phil Watson, who's part of this church, and he was in a dark place. He was like the guy at the tombs that was just struggling. And then Christ really did set him free, because this is the thing. If the Son has set you free, you are free Indeed, he wants you to be free. He wants you to experience peace. He wants your kids to not be an anxious generation. So let's go ahead and watch this video again. Then I'll come up and pray for us and we'll get you out of here.
The big impact in my life has been this church and God's working through this church to impact not just my life, but the life of my family. When I was a kid, I did start getting into video games, but I was such an outdoorsy kid, it didn't really make a difference. It was when I was in high school that I really started getting into gaming. My sophomore year of high school, my brother attempted to kill himself. I had to go out into our garage to remove the nooses that my mom found there. My brother got into hospital, got help. Then my freshman year of college, my brother committed suicide. I went home, went to my room, and my best friend brought over his gaming system, and I just stayed in my room and did that for hours. I didn't want to process it, didn't want to feel it, didn't know how to handle it. And so I just played and let the world around me kind of not exist for a while. And that was really the beginning of my digital addiction. That was my exit. That was my escape. Spending hours and hours and hours just escaping reality. After my brother died, I did a lot of blaming of God for that situation. Took a lot of responsibility onto myself for that. Blamed God for that a lot. Struggled with my faith a lot. A girl I knew from high school and we reconnected. We dated for a while. We ended up getting married. My addiction to video gaming had an impact on our relationship. I, not wanting to admit it, but I was also struggling with depression and didn't want to do anything about it. My wife and I tried counseling, but I wasn't committed to doing it. We decided to seek out a church where we could both go to, both be happy with. And so that led us to BRAC. We saw that they were doing the Family Struggle Bus series. And so we were very excited to go. We ended up going the week before that. We never stopped coming back. It was a revelation for me to finally understand that I had an addiction to a virtual world, digital media that was ruining my relationships with my family. I finally was able to really commit to counseling, which made a huge impact on my life. Only God could have orchestrated that sequence of events that were needed for me to get the help that I needed. My wife and I have a best friend relationship back that we had when we started. That's been amazing. My relationship with my kids is awesome. I really am overwhelmed by how God has reached into my life and changed things. Do the things for God and with God that God has in store for you. And those things are so much better than anything we could plan for ourselves.
I love how he said that what God has in store for you is so much better than anything you could plan for yourself. Because some of you fear the consequences of making some changes with your devices. But when you get to the promised land, you'll find out that Jesus isn't here to kill your fun. He's actually here to give you peace, to give you calmness. And come on, we know that our teenagers are living among the most anxious generation in the history of civilization. So let's do this. Let's lead our kids. Let's help our kids. We're not going to be perfect. It's going to be exhausting. They're going to maybe find ways around it, but we got to keep doing this together because it's worth it. It's worth their minds. So let's do this. Jesus has come to bring you an abundant, good, and peaceful life. Let's not put the chains back on. Let's not let the devil keep sneaking around, masquerading as an angel of light. Let's join with Jesus, who said, Satan has no hold on me. because he did in fact come to destroy the devil's work. Let's pray together. God, this is way easier to talk about than to actually do, because it means for some of us, we're going to have to go home and have some hard conversations, overturn some stones, and look at some things that we are terrified to see. But Lord, your grace is so good. Your goodness is more than we can even imagine. Would you give all of us the strength to be good leaders in our homes and to not let Satan run amok? For you have come to bring calmness and stillness and peace into our homes. Help us to take this seriously. Help us to do it, Lord. It's all for your glory. It's all for the glory, the name of the God who is the Father and the Son and the Spirit. Amen. Appreciate you guys being here, listening to this. Thanks for wrestling with it. If the Son has set you free, then you are free indeed. So go and be free and experience the peace of Christ. Love you guys. Have a great day. God bless you. We'll see you around.